So the first thing you want to do is you want to think about like what is your existing audience, not necessarily, what email addresses do you have? If you have email marketing lists, if you have customer lists that maybe you've never emailed before, sort of gather whatever email addresses you have, and along those lines, start to think about touch points you have with customers where you can get email addresses, right? Whether that be if you have a store and they're buying in person, whether it be clients, potential clients, people who have read blog posts or video content, any of that kind of stuff. You want to identify all your touch points, and you want to make sure that at those touch points, you are telling people about your newsletter, you are inviting them to join it, and you are explaining to them and giving them a reason to do so, right? So, for example, and you can get creative with that, right? Let's say you owned a gardening store. When every customer is buying, here's what happens too often is they go, oh, you want to join our mailing list? Like, and most people are like, no, I don't, right? It's very different to go, hey, every 2 weeks we send an email with tips on how to improve your garden. Would you like to check it out? Or would you like to check out the next one? Right? You want to frame what you're offering as valuable and interesting and make it easy for them to say yes. It's not just mention it. Oh, we have a newsletter. Would you like to get it? Like, that's really different than saying, hey, here's what the value is that you're going to get out of it. The other thing is social followers. If you're doing something on social media, which I assume most of you are, lots of people think about how they grow their social followers, and they don't think about how you convert your social followers into email subscribers, which is way more valuable. I would also add, let's say you use multiple social channels. Once you have someone's email address, it's easy to get them to then follow you on various social channels, right? So people sort of invert it. It's like once you get that email address, you can get to them to get them to do all sorts of stuff, right? Let's say someone follows you on Instagram and you get them to join your email list and you want them to follow you on LinkedIn. Well, your next newsletter, you could include, oh, come answer this question that we referenced on LinkedIn. Like, you could drive them straight to that content. You're not really going to do that on Instagram, right? You're not going to post and say, hey, go to LinkedIn and answer this question. You could, but it's not the same. To convert social followers into newsletter subscribers, the most important thing you can do is include a call to action in your bio, give people a clear reason to give you their email address, and use your bio link to link directly to your newsletter sign up page. Make it clear what you want them to do, make it clear what the value is. So this is my Twitter profile. The bio obviously says, I help you produce, promote, and profit from your creations. Subscribe to my newsletter below for free personalized recommendations. Get it here, link straight to the sign up page, right? Most people, again, don't do this. Their bio says, oh, we're a gardening company, we're a logo design company, I'm a marketing consultant, and then the link is just to the homepage of their website, which is fine, but that's not going to get you nearly as many subscribers as actually making the call to action to do so. Survey your audience. This I've done for my newsletter in the early days. It was incredibly eye-opening and very helpful. It's also helpful in general for your brand, your marketing. I recommend a really simple 3-question survey. Don't use multiple choice. Leave it open-ended because you want to see the words that your audience uses so that you can then repurpose those words into your marketing materials, into your sign-up page. These are the 3 questions I asked. They worked really well. I'll do it for newsletter, but again, this is something you could do for your brand or business in general. But in one word, how does my newsletter make you feel? Obviously, this would be to people who have already been reading it for a little bit. You wouldn't do this after sending one issue. In one sentence, what are your favorite newsletter articles that I share about? And what's your favorite newsletter other than this one? So the first question is going to give you a very clear emotional trigger that people use. So for me, for example, I would talk about my newsletter very feature driven. So I would say, the newsletter helps people produce, promote, and profit from their creations. And when I asked this question, again, it was open-ended. It was not multiple choice, but I had, I think, almost 20 people, the word they chose was inspired. And I was not talking about the inspirational value of my newsletter at all in anything that I did. So that was really opening, that it was like, wow, 20 people randomly chose the exact same word. And it's a word I don't even use when talking about my newsletter. Like, that's a missed opportunity. In one sentence, what are your favorite articles about? Obviously, this gives you a sense sort of separate from just the click stats of what people actually want from your newsletter and what's resonating with them the most. And then what's your favorite newsletter other than this one is really helpful, because number one, from a marketing standpoint, it might tip you off that, like, oh, a lot of people who like this newsletter also like mine. I should go find that audience, whether you're going to do that with paid ads or cross promotions or any of that stuff. One thing to keep in mind with that question is the answers you get to that will be influenced a bit based on how large the newsletter is. So, for example, if James Clear has millions of subscribers, you're likely going to get more people to say they like James Clear's newsletter than some other newsletter that has 500 subscribers. So take that with a grain of salt, especially when it comes to sort of bigger newsletters. But it is helpful and can be helpful in terms of sort of getting a sense of where your audience is. This is another tactic that I always recommend. It's one of the first things I recommend to anyone that wants to grow their newsletters. It works in basically any niche in any industry, and it is very effective. I call it a recommended newsletter post. So what you want to do is you want to come up with, and by the way, you could also do this with podcasts or video channels or anything. You want to create a piece of content that essentially recommends ideally 10 or more newsletters in your niche or space, right? Make yours one of them. You can't see this in the excerpt I pulled, but my newsletter is in here, and make a nod to it. Say like, oh, I might be biased, but I think this one's really helpful as well. So what happens here is once you create this post, you can then turn it into social posts and tag all these people as well. You can reach out to all these newsletters and let them know, hey, I featured you in this list. Many of them will then share it. And so it is a great way to sort of drive people to you. In this case, I highlighted 39 creativity newsletters. If a third of those then mentioned and linked to this in their newsletter, you're reaching a lot of people for free. Plus, you're developing relationships and all of that. Super effective. And again, you can apply it to basically any niche, any industry, anything you're doing. And I do it with, what I like about doing it with newsletters is anyone that's going to read this is interested in these kind of newsletters. So it is a 100% target fit. These are the kind of people that are going to subscribe. You're not reading a post about creativity newsletters worth reading if you're not the kind of person that subscribes to creativity newsletters. So the audience you attract for it is hyper targeted. This also, if you were going to do paid promotion in terms of a Facebook ad or something else, good piece of content to do it for, because again, anyone that's clicking and reading is actively looking for newsletters like this to subscribe to. Really effective tactic. Another tactic here, share when you do write your newsletter, share it on social before you publish it. Give people a reason to subscribe. What most people do is they publish their newsletter and then they share it after it comes out, which is fine. I'm not saying not to do that. But when you do that, you haven't really given people a reason to subscribe, because they might subscribe if they read it and like it, but there's not the same sense of urgency. So I promote my newsletter before I send it with something like this. I tease it basically. Here's what's headed to your inbox. Not yet subscribed and want to get it. And then I show them what's actually going to be in the newsletter. So as you can imagine, this always gets subscribers because people see that and they go, oh, I really want to read that thing about how to manage your time like a computer does. So I'm going to sign up. Versus the promo afterwards, they would just click and read it, and maybe they subscribe, maybe they don't. So I recommend definitely promoting it before you publish, teasing it like this. And you can also promote it afterwards, but that is helpful. A quick rant about lead magnets. So for those of you that don't know what a lead magnet is, it's basically a piece of sort of content or something you come up with that people can only access if they give you their email address. It is a super common marketing tactic. It can be effective. I'm not going to lie, it will get you more email addresses. However, it's not, I don't actually recommend doing it. And the reason I don't recommend doing it is because what I think especially in the context of a newsletter, I like a lead magnet for email marketing, where you're just going to get an email and then send them marketing messages. I don't like it for a newsletter, because what you get is you get emails from people who just want the lead magnet. They don't want the newsletter. So it's kind of fool's gold. You feel like, oh, look, this is really working. I'm getting all these email addresses. And then they all unsubscribe or don't open the newsletter, or they gave you a sort of alternate email address just to get the lead magnet. So you feel like it's working, but it's actually not. My other take on lead magnets is, if you have, the whole point of it is to create a piece of content that is so valuable that people will want to give you their email address to get it. If you have actually created a piece of content that is that valuable, you should not want to limit the number of people who see it. You should want as many people as possible to see it. And you should incorporate into it plugs for your newsletter. So if your content or your lead magnet is really good, put it out for free, get as many people as possible to see it. And when they're blown away and go, oh my God, this was amazing, they're going to want to sign up for your newsletter. And when they sign up for your newsletter, they're going to, again, they signed up for the newsletter. So they're going to stick around. They're going to be a more valuable subscriber. And the other thing is, your reach is going to be way bigger, because this great piece of free content they're going to share, they're going to tell others about, they're going to drive more people to you. So you're going to come out way ahead, as opposed to hiding it, where when you hide it and request an email address, number one, most of the emails you get, they didn't want the newsletter, they wanted the lead magnet. Number two, how many people were curious but not curious enough to give you their email address? Whereas had they actually seen the great piece of content, they then would have subscribed. So I strongly recommend, I like the idea of creating a lead magnet type piece of content, but I would not use it as a lead magnet and require an email address. I would try to get as many people as possible to see it and share it. Paid growth is a whole other thing. We could do 4 sessions probably just on paid growth, and maybe at some point we will. But at a very high level, if you're going to spend money to grow your newsletter, these are the 3 things that I would consider spending it on. First, and probably most effective and cost effective, if it fits in your niche, is newsletter ads. If you can find newsletters that have an audience that is relevant to your people, they're incredibly effective. They reach an audience of people who are already subscribing to newsletters. They can be a great investment. Now, not everyone can find newsletters that fit their niche, but if you can find it, I strongly recommend it. To give you an idea, for example, I sell ads in my newsletter. It's $100, and for $100, you reach my audience of about 20,000 creators and entrepreneurs. And you get 1 ad in the Sunday edition, which is, I run 5 ads in that edition. And then you also are the sole sponsor of a weekday edition, and you're the only sponsor of that the following week. On average, the people that buy my ads get 150 clicks. I've had people get over 100 subscribers when they promote their newsletter. So 100 subscribers for $100 is, again, not that you're always going to get that, but in general, it's very effective if you're a fit. And I'm mentioning my newsletter because obviously I have the most insight into that, but I've run ads in other people's newsletters, and it's almost always very cost effective. Separate from that, Facebook and Instagram ads obviously can be very effective. You can get hyper targeted. You can scale almost endlessly. My one advice, if you're going to do Facebook and Instagram ads, is a lot of times what most people do is they run ads basically to a sign-up page. And I have found in my own experience that you're better off promoting a piece of content with plugs for the ads or plugs for your newsletter within it. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one is, if you run an ad to a newsletter and people have no idea who you are, they haven't read your content, that's a bit of a jump. Some people may subscribe, but it's sort of a big leap to go through to get them to give you your email address without any context of who you are. But if you drive them to content, they see it, they're like, oh, this is really valuable, they're more likely to convert. But the bigger thing is, nobody's ever going to share a Facebook or Instagram ad to a newsletter sign up page, but they will share content. So this is kind of similar to the lead magnet piece, that if you're running an ad driving to a good piece of relevant content, you're going to get a lot of sharing of that, and all of that organic free traffic is going to drastically reduce how much it costs you per subscriber. So that's another reason why, if you're going to do Facebook ads, I like promoting content instead of sign up page. The third one is referral programs. These are easy ways that you can, if you have an existing audience, you can incentivize them to share and spread the word. You can give them rewards based on how many people they get to sign up. I recommend Sparkloop to power that. It's a software that makes it easy. It assigns a sort of unique ID to every one of your subscribers, and then it tracks all of how many subscriptions they get, and you can just assign rewards and do it from there. Referral programs can be effective. They can be a little hit or miss. It depends on your niche. It depends on your audience. I probably wouldn't bother doing it until you have at least a couple thousand subscribers. If your audience is too small, it might not be worth the effort, but you can experiment with it. And then finally, just a couple quick sort of don't forget things that are obvious but maybe not obvious. One, make sure your sign up page is mobile friendly. People will access it there. I'm amazed sometimes that people are promoting their newsletter and then I'm on my phone and I go to it and I can't even see the sign up form, or it's all jumbled. Social proof on your sign up page can be really helpful. And by the way, we're going to do a deeper dive in sign up pages on the next session. But social proof can be really helpful. A couple testimonials for people talking about, how great or how valuable your newsletter is. Another version of social proof, if you don't have the sort of testimonial quotes, depending on what your newsletter is, especially if it's in the sort of business space, people from these kinds of companies subscribe, that can say something. People that work at Google and Microsoft and whatever. This is a really simple one that lots of people screw up. Don't call it a mailing list. Nobody wants to join a mailing list. They just think that you're going to pester them. That doesn't sound like something that's valuable to them. Always call it a newsletter or resource or something that sounds valuable, never a mailing list. And then the other thing is just keep in mind, besides your sign up page, which again, we'll get into next week or on Thursday, there are secondary, what I call sort of secondary sign up pages and opportunities everywhere. Your about page is a big one. If someone's reading your about page, there should be a plug for your newsletter in it. Blog posts should include a plug for your newsletter, not just in the footer or in the sidebar, actually in the text of the blog post. I recommend within the first 3 to 5 paragraphs having a reference to your newsletter that's made relevant to whatever the topic of the newsletter is. So for example, if I was writing, let's say I wrote a blog post about what to tweet, I might in that third paragraph in parentheses after something just say, oh, and by the way, if you're interested in learning more about how to master Twitter, you'll love my newsletter, or check out this, right? Those are you don't want to, what a lot of people do is their sign up form is just at the bottom of their blog post or it's in the sidebar. And, that's only going to get in front of people who read the whole thing and continue to scroll down, right? So if you put a reference in the text higher up, they're going to at least see it, which is going to get you more subscribers. And then YouTube descriptions, again, like little, just simple places, anywhere people are consuming any of your stuff, you want to have a plug for the newsletter, because it's really, going back to sort of the beginning of what I was talking about, it's the engine of becomes the engine of a lot of your marketing and your connection to your audience. And then most importantly, click send. People get bogged down forever trying to perfect things and trying to figure out what to do next. At the end of the day, publish your newsletter, publish it consistently. You can optimize and figure out the rest as you go. Don't get bogged down in all this other stuff. Just start publishing it and getting better at it. And assuming it's good, it will spread, and you will grow over time. Even if you didn't do any of the other stuff, as long as you write something good and publish it regularly, it will drive some word of mouth.